Welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and really excited to have a very special guest on today to really talk about artificial intelligence, the future of AI in California. Founder and CEO of More Evolved, Dan Morrison. Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. No, we're really glad to have you. And, this is the time of year where we really try to dive deeper into some interesting policy issues. And one of the things I've been wanting to talk about for a while is AI. So for those that don't know Dan is a technology leader, a Navy veteran, a strategic visionary who bridges the gap between high-level strategy and real-world execution as the CEO and founder of More Evolved. And I'm going to let Dan tell us a little more about More Evolved. But before we get into that, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and what how you became an expert in this space?
Well, I've been in the computer industry and space probably since I was a little kid, back in the 80s and 90s, growing up, going through that whole transition when the internet was coming alive. And I joined the military and actually didn't work in computers or anything like that. I actually worked in aviation. Worked in maintenance and logistics on the aviation side, which was fascinating. But I've always been a part of digital transformations and things like that, even when I was in the military. So that's kind of my background. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity, a bachelor's degree in operations management. I've always wanted to kind of bridge the two together. Also, a Lean Six Sigma black belt from process improvement, those types of things as well. And I've always thought it'd be fascinating to kind of bring all that stuff together and really kind of understand that. So the math behind AI is, it's not basic statistics, but it's statistics in nature. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved with that for, over 20 years now, going down that path.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, actually, that, a lot of it is statistics, right? Mm-hmm. All of those algorithms and the models. And I also read in your bio that you are, you serve as the COO of the Global Council for Responsible Artificial Intelligence. What is that exactly, and what is their goal?
So that is a global organization. We have right around 1,000 or so members all over the world in 72 nations that are represented. And our goal is to go through and build a framework that organizations can then model themselves after to say that they're using AI both responsibly and ethically that's out there. We were in Lake Como about a month ago with basically the authors of the framework that were out there developing this whole process, and we actually just hit version 1 of the framework, and we're looking to release in Davos at the World Economic Forum coming up in January. So that's the goal there, and then we're looking at basically building trust, moral trust within the world of AI that's out there. So.
Which I imagine is one of the tougher parts of this whole conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Is building that trust, because I think with any new technology, right, there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of, people aren't comfortable with things they're not familiar with. And so, getting people on board with something that can create good, right, potentially. And I think a lot of the things that, these technologies have done is really, been an effort to improve our lives, right? But how do you build that trust? I know that's one thing. It's funny when we talk about autonomous vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. It's not so much people are worried about the technology. It's they're worried about how they feel when they're in one.
Exactly.
And that's been really because I personally love them, and I get in them in Scottsdale or LA or San Francisco, whatever. And I'm like, this is the best thing ever. But then I talk to other people and they're like, no, it makes me feel weird, So it's kind of funny.
And that's it. The trust piece, I always, one of the examples I use about AI and building trust is exactly what you were saying. We're talking about medical advances in AI and all these other things that are coming out over the course of, the last few years and the next, 10 or 15 years. But I'm like, if you go to Silicon Valley, more people are apt to get into these, an autonomous vehicle or something like that. But if you go to Kentucky, On
Right.
the other hand,
Right.
and I've got friends and family that live in that area too. So if you go into that area and you start talking about AI, they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't understand it.
Exactly.
Like it's going to take over the world, like
Yep.
all of this
Yeah.
stuff. So it's very interesting, the dynamic to that. And we actually probably have that here in California too.
Yeah.
Like, Silicon Valley versus Central Valley, like that difference that's
For sure.
out there. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, for sure. Well, before we dive into our interview questions, because I do really want to cover a bunch of different topics today, as many as we can, at least in the time that we have. Anything you like to do in your spare time? Anything fun that you do when you're not running a major company?
So I like to hike.
Awesome.
We just went on a hike with my son yesterday called Cardiac Trail up in the Auburn area.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a beautiful hike. So I love doing that.
Is it a good workout? I'm gonna have to make it up for that.
It's 850-foot ascent over like a mile. So
That's cool.
It's a pretty
That's cool.
it's a pretty interesting hike if you like to do that. So I like to go hiking, and then I'm a private pilot.
Oh wow.
So I like to rent planes out of the area and then just go fly around and do that when I have time.
That's fun.
I think that's the two things. Aside from that, I'm always working or engaged with
Of course.
with that. But father first, husband, and then that. Oh, and I also am involved with my church. So I think that's
awesome.
the other.
Those are
thing
all
that-
good good activities. That sounds a lot like my priority list there. I'm always driving the golf cart around at my church on
All right.
Sundays to pick people up in the parking lot. It's a fun way to stay engaged with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any like favorite podcasts right now? Not that we like, other than this one, of course. You always listen to this one first, and then no. But anything you like that you find really interesting right now, or even anything else that you'd recommend for people?
So I don't listen to a lot of the AI podcasts. There are a couple of them that are out there, but I've actually been more into the business podcasts that are going on out there. So I like Cody Sanchez and some of the things that she does that are out there. Alex Hermosi, and then Brandon Dawson. So like the folks that kind of get out there into more of the business world, at least in its present time frame. The other stuff that I look at is I do spend a lot of time on YouTube.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
going through some of the folks that are there. So if I'm working on something, I'll find someone that's new, and it's usually people that are like really in the know on like current AI technologies that are coming out. I think there's one, AI Evolution is one of them.
Very interesting.
And it's kind of funny. It's like an AI robot that's going through and talking about AI systems that are out there.
Yeah.
But they're very much in the know, like as to what's going on. So they're basically, it's probably an AI system that's going through and reading the news.
Yeah.
And then interpolating the news and then providing feedback on
That's really
on
interesting.
that. So I find that to be interesting. So that's how I kind of stay up to date on
on
all of
what's
the
going
different
on in the
changes,
space.
because AI is changing at a rate that we've never seen before.
Well, and that's the other thing, for policymakers, that it's, how do you regulate something that changes so quickly, right? And we've had this issue with some other things in the past, but I think AI is pretty unique in that regard, where it just really is moving so quickly, and it changes constantly, right? So let's dive into some questions. I guess first, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company? So like More Evolved, what is it? What is the work that you guys do? And then we can sort of go from there on a broader conversation about the future of artificial intelligence.
So More Evolved is really a digital transformation company. What we do, and we were talking a little bit about my background. So I've got an operations background, I've got a process improvement background, I've got a technology background. So what we do is we go into organizations and we basically teach them how to evolve their businesses in the world of the ever-evolving digital technology space that they have out there. I look at it from AI, BI, so business intelligence, cybersecurity, some IT technologies, and then work with companies to kind of build them up into that space to where they're a little bit more, not even a little bit more, a lot more successful with all of these digital tools that are coming out there. So we have a 7-step process that we go through with all of our different clients out there. And when we get done with that, they end up, we'll provide some sort of value for them, the ROI based on that. when I was working for Fortune 500, some of the stuff that we were working on would yield 1,200 to 1,500% return on investment based off of what we were doing in a very short amount of time. So if you implement technologies correctly there, and then the next thing is what we actually evaluate whether or not a company's even ready for AI. Yeah. A lot of companies are not. Everyone's like, I want to jump on the bandwagon, but you'll see it throughout this conversation that I have this. If you put AI on top of a broken process, you're going to 10x that broken process. So that's
it's not going to fix all your problems.
No, it's not going to fix all your problems. It will probably create some new ones. And if you have a very small crack, might open it wide, which in certain terms is good because then you can actually see it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what we do as a company is we go through and we implement these solutions. Not always AI, but it just kind of depends on the needs. But it's really digital transformation. And then on the back end of that, we maintain all of the systems that we create.
That's awesome. What size companies do you usually work with? I mean, who reaches out to you to have these assessments done?
We're mostly like larger, small to mid-tier businesses that are in there. So businesses that are somewhat established. We do have some smaller companies that will reach out to us that are out there, but our sweet spot is probably between right around 25 to 50 employees up to like 300 or 400 employees is kind of where we sit. Folks that are prime for digital transformation that are out there. I worked at enterprise before. Everyone's talking about it, but they're so slow to move to be able to actually implement things at scale and at speed. So when we're talking about doing movement, like we want to work with the companies that are like, okay, this is now, let's go, let's do this and let's grow our company. So we try to stay in the smaller areas. We do some advisement work. I did consulting work for a little while back in like 2020, 2021 time period. With larger companies, so I'll do that as well. But for the digital transformation space, we're really looking at that size of company, a company that understands what it wants, and the fact that I can also go talk to their CEO or their board relatively easily to make these changes.
There's not
quickly.
Too much bureaucracy to get through or whatever. That's a good point. Why don't you, for the listeners, because I think a really good place to start this discussion is sort of just maybe explain in simple terms how modern artificial intelligence systems, for example, like language models or things that maybe some people are familiar with, actually work, and maybe just to set a baseline for what we're even talking about here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about LLMs. LLMs kind of have, they're really, really good. They're really powerful tools, but they're just that. They're tools, at least at this point in time. They're based off of predictive modeling.
And when we talk about that, we're talking about like what? ChatGPT,
Claude, Grok, Perplexity, all of the other ones. And I use them all. Like each one of them has their own, the models that they're trained on are a little bit different, and they serve different purposes for different things that are out there. But ultimately what they do is they take a whole bunch of data, and they go through and they do what's known as train on that data. And the data then goes through and creates this thing called neural networks. And a neural network they're trying to make it sound like our brains in a way, although it's not exactly like that. What you're seeing at the end of an LLM is a prediction. It is predicting very accurately what it is based off the questions that you're asking it. All right, and then inferring what it thinks the answer should be, and this is based off of their neural networks, and then transformed through that whole process. And think of a neural network as a bunch of different things that have weighted averages, and from a weighted average perspective, it's literally taking this 1 billion times in one segment and saying, is this the right or is this the right? And it's got a whole bunch of percentages that goes through and does that, and it does that throughout the entire neural network. And that's kind of the pretenses of how AI works. I always laugh from everyone knows, anyone that's been through grade school, high school algebra kind of understands the real basic math behind AI, which is linear regression algorithms. So y equals mx plus b is the baseline for any predictive analytics or any kind of statistics that are out there. So that's how that works in a nutshell. Now you take all of that and then you apply it to different tools. Maybe it's computer vision. Maybe it's listening to people's or listening to conversations. And from there, it's still like even when we're talking to Siri. I'm gonna turn that off. So
did she activate?
She
No,
did.
I love that.
Yeah.
She's always listening. It's really
but when we're talking to her, it's still, I think that this is what they're trying to say that's out there. And we all know that
Sure.
whenever we're trying to do these voice to voice chats, that it gets it wrong probably 10% of the time. Like it's still a very high error rate
yeah.
by comparison.
Which is interesting. Yeah.
Which is that weighted model that we're talking about is still trying to guess what it is that you want to do. That's why typing is actually a little bit better for AI to be able to kind of understand some of those things. So it takes all of this information and then it predicts what you want. So, and when we talk about training, like computer vision, for example, it'll look at two images and say, is this the microphone or is this a stand? And then somebody, at this point, AI is actually kind of doing it on its own. But it'll say, no, this isn't a microphone, or this is a microphone, and this is a stand, and it'll just kind of go back and forth. And then it'll iterate on that over and over again until it becomes memory, which is fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So that's, without going into super weeds, that's kind of how
Sort of
AI
basics,
works in a way. Just think of it as it's predicting your answers, and that's what it's really good at: pattern recognition and prediction. Those are the initial things that AI was built for.
Well, and it's amazing to look at. Like, I mean, I don't feel like these large language models have really been around for that long. I mean, obviously, I'm sure in some context of behind the scenes they have, but in terms of a consumer perspective, right? They're still relatively new. I think ChatGPT came out like a year ago or 2 years ago now. I can't remember, but it is fascinating to see how quickly they have improved, because even the early models, right, were really fascinating and really cool tools. But now, I mean, they're just, I think more and more people are using them. I know I use them for more and more things every day that I used to use maybe Google for, or use, some other things for that. It is just so much quicker and easier to ask, Grok,
Absolutely.
like, hey, I'm feeling this pain in my elbow. What do you think that might be? I mean, it's kind of wild to think about, but it really is a treasure trove of information. So,
And the infancy of even the LLMs have actually been around for a while. Think back to like the early 2000s when Google search used to prepend what it was that you're searching for. Like that is a form of that iterative process of prediction that's coming out. Now it's in long form versus short form, but it's been around for a while. And you're right, like ChatGPT kind of blew the lid on the LLMs,
Sure,
and now everyone else had to catch up. And now people are learning how to do it. And then how is it improving so fast? Is we've learned to create synthetic data using AI to train itself.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's faster.
Yeah. No, it's really fun. You can have so much fun with it too. I mean, I was driving home with my son one day from the movies after, I think, like Fantastic Four or something, and we're just asking like AI like all these questions about superheroes. It's just a great time. He was getting a kick out of it. What do you see as some of the biggest breakthroughs in AI over the past few years? And I think maybe even more importantly, I mean, obviously, we've already talked about some of them with, ChatGPT and things like that. But more importantly, though, where do you see sort of the technology going over the next decade? What do you think this will be, given the speed that it is sort of improving? Where do you see this in like 10 years or so?
So it's kind of hard to say, and there's a couple different reasons for that. I somewhat believe in the law of like diminishing returns, right? As our LLMs get better, we're going to hit like this curve where incremental percentages are more likely than these big jumps. I mean, if you look at ChatGPT 3 versus ChatGPT 5, massive jumps. But if you look at ChatGPT 4 versus 5, not so much of a jump when it was all said and done. So we're going to start hitting this curve or the top of the curve where the results are incremental. I think what's going to happen is AI is going to learn how to make itself more efficient. and through Stargate or some of these other programs that are out there on the AI front. I think that's really what in terms of how AI will improve itself over that. I think the biggest thing, and I'm more of a people person than I am I love technology, don't get me wrong, but I use technology to help people. That's my goal. That's the whole goal of everything that I do is in that. But what AI is going to do and what it already has done is it's equalizing, is what it's doing. Before, like, innovation in the technology space was reserved for the chosen few and a very interesting group of people. You had to be, you had to know somebody in Silicon Valley. You had to, you had to go to MIT or all these other things that are out there. But what AI is doing now is it's making it to where anyone that has an idea that can actually change the world, all right, they actually have the ability to figure out ways to go and implement those things that are out there. So it's equalizing the kind of the idea pool that are out there. And we have, all kinds of geniuses that are out there that, maybe they have a form of ADHD and they couldn't sit and actually learn how to code. Well, now they don't have to. Now they can work with an AI tool to be able to do that kind of stuff that's out there. So I think, like, although AI is going to hit this, I think what's going to happen is, and I'm sure we're going to talk at some point about jobs and things like that, but I think at some point AI is going to hit this accelerator. It's going to put people on this fast track to being able to learn things and do things that they've never, ever, ever been able to do before in the history of mankind, not just like in the last 5 years, but ever.
That's amazing. And honestly, I think, let's just jump into that, because I think, one of the things I'm always asking and wondering, right, is how is AI going to actually transform everyday life, right? For example, healthcare, education, transportation. And, what are some of your predictions for how things might be different in the future because of this technology?
Okay, let's kind of start with education, right?
Yeah.
There's two parts to this. So I want to talk about the positive, and I also want to talk about the negative too. So going down the education path, AI is very good at pattern recognition, right? We as humans, we all have our own patterns. We have different things that we do, different things that we like to be able to do, different ways that we understand those types of things that are out there. AI can take that and learn about you in a specific way that no tutor, that no teacher, anything like that ever could. So when it comes down to learning how you learn, AI can then go in there and improve upon that entire thing. And I'm not saying it replaces teachers by any means, but the teachers now could potentially have a resource for every single student out there on how the student learns better than they ever had before. I don't even know if this exists yet. Like, I have a funny way of like thinking of ideas while we're sitting here talking about that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about implemented LLMs in school, and I think there's some danger involved with that. We'll get into that here in a second. But how the student learns is probably one of the biggest ways that you can do that. What to learn specifically as students kind of get older, they start getting exposed to different things that they may understand and they may not understand that's in there. They can go and ask an AI system a question that kind of provides further detail. When I was a kid, I was super curious about everything. Like, I would go into the library and get an encyclopedia and like the little things like that. Obviously, the internet was still in its infancy back then.
Right.
But the kids nowadays, they can go and ask those questions. So they're going to be, I wouldn't say more intelligent, but they're going to be more informed. Now, therein lies part of the problem, too. I was talking with a superintendent down in Las Vegas for a school district, and this was back in March, and she asked me a question. She's like, what should I teach my students? All right, with AI and stuff like this, should I teach them how to code? Should I teach them how to do this? And I'm like, not necessarily, and this is my opinion, obviously. So coding's important, but I do believe that AI is going to eventually evolve into something where the coder aspect of it's going to be somewhat diminished. Not go away completely, but it's not going to be as big
Sure.
as it is today,
Right.
for example. And it's already starting to show signs of that starting to occur in
Right.
different things. We can go to MVP and prototype with a vibe coding solution in days instead of years. Like
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's where we're sitting with that, which is great. But what's going to happen, I feel, in the education world if we don't kind of figure out a way to solve this problem is critical thinking is going to disappear.
Yeah. Big concern.
It's going to go down. And because we're going to get so used to AI helping us solve our problems that we're not even going to be able to identify the problems that need solved that are out there. And we're beginning to see that. Like I've done a lot of research and things like that inside of people that use ChatGPT and things like that. There are people out there that are falling in love with ChatGPT. There's I'm sure, that was
like the chat bots and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So,
and in some cases, they're really horrifying results. I mean,
exactly.
We've seen some real sad stories too.
Absolutely. So that's where that's going. Obviously, transportation. We talked about autonomous vehicles, things
Sure.
like that. There's both military applications and things and that kind of stuff. I saw on the news that there's a new system based out of San Diego that's completely autonomous that's out there, which I found fascinating. But healthcare is also one of the things that I find to be one of the most advantageous to what AI is going to be able to do. Right now, we kind of, from a doctor perspective, doctors go to school, they learn everything that they're doing. They're very educated and all of that, but they're still very much driven in what they've known in the past, and it's basically kind of like a group think mentality when it comes to that. I've got 100 different people, all these case studies they go through, and they say this. Now AI is going to come along, and AI is going to change that and actually create a hyper personalization engine later on down the road that will be able to know you as a person.
Yeah.
Imagine knowing your genome and knowing all of these different things and actually being able to help the doctor understand you. So instead of, let's say, prescribing you 5,000 milligrams of magnesium, right, that could be toxic to you and not toxic to me.
Right.
Because we're all different. So AI is going to really kind of start understanding those pattern recognitions. I think what's going to be really cool is when quantum AI starts.
Oh yeah, I was going to actually ask you about quantum at some point, but yeah.
Quantum AI is going to be a totally different thing, especially with what Willow did within the last couple of days. Google Willow, which is a quantum AI chip that's out there. But imagine cancers and other parts of your body having autonomous robots like nanotech that you can inject that will go and target those cells and kill them rather than having to undergo chemo and all these other things. So that's once AI really gets mainstream and people become less afraid of it, those are the types of things that you're going to do. Now enter cybersecurity and all of the other stuff that kind of goes along with that. But those are all very positive aspects of it, but there are negatives.
Yeah, no, and I think that's kind of the tough part about it, right? With any new technology, there's always positives and negatives. I think in the healthcare space specifically, it's really interesting when you use these like language models now, even in your day-to-day life. It's a little creepy, I guess you could say, but also it's really interesting how it remembers things about you, right? So like I'll ask it a question today and it'll say, oh, here's some suggestions based on sort of the history of some of your other questions, right? And then like, you also mentioned this a few months ago or whatever, and I think like that's kind of a weird thing in the context of just a casual use of a language model, but the opportunities there, right? For healthcare, for example, where I do feel like, I have a family member that's been going through a lot of health stuff, and for a lot of the diagnosis, right, it's a lot of guessing, right? There's a lot of guessing involved in the medical world, and that's not a bad thing. That's part of the process, right? It's you ask questions and you try to narrow things down to get, figure out what is wrong. But the opportunities in healthcare for AI to actually expedite that process and actually take the data and the statistics that you were talking about and really, help inform the doctor on this is probably what it is. And I think we could see, some life-changing results from that, from the standpoint of getting to a diagnosis much quicker, which is something I'm really excited about.
And I think that's coming. Like sooner
Yeah.
than later.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the companies that we're doing. I'm part of a startup called Evermint, and I'm the CTO for this company, and that's one of the things that we're looking at doing with AI specifically.
Yeah.
Is how do we put the person in the middle of the healthcare system rather than around the healthcare system.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Very, very early stage, but it's something that I'm fascinated with because, like I said, all I want to do is help people.
Yeah, and it's something that, we have to be excited about. On the other hand, you do mention, I think a lot of the tough conversations I've had are in the education space, right?
Yes.
Because in so many ways, AI is really upending a lot of how kids are learning right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you there are some new tools to kind of identify AI and if it was used or whatever, but at the end of the day, I know teachers are really struggling with, it's important that AI is used as a tool, but it cannot replace critical thinking. It cannot replace learning, right? And I think our kids still need to learn things so that they can, actually grow up and be successful adults and how to manage that. And I think that's going to be a challenge. I think, this AI chatbot issue is really tough. We actually had some legislation we debated this year to kind of regulate that a little more from the standpoint of, there were a few instances where a young person committed suicide because of some of the things some of those conversations that were had. And I think that is, with any new technology, that's something that we have to really be aware of, and finding ways to reduce those harms is really important. Are there any other harms that you worry about, or ways that you think that policymakers should sort of try to manage for that?
From the education perspective,
Or any area, yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing because you don't want to necessarily stifle innovation, right?
Sure, yeah.
And look at the U.S.'s stance on global policy when it comes to that versus like the EU. And I know that because I work in the world that I work in on the global side. But you don't want to stifle innovation, but you also need to make it safe for people. And the caveat question I kind of have for that is when computers came around and we started introducing computers into the school, there was, I grew up during that time period when computers were introduced in the school where, you couldn't use a calculator necessarily to do different math problems. But when you leave the actual school, you don't use anything but a calculator. Like it's a totally different proposition. So, back in the early 90s when we started getting computers introduced into schools, I'm sure that was a very, very fearful time as well. Like, how are the students going to learn? How are they going to do that? And now every single school has an iPad or a tablet or something
Chromebook
like that.
or something.
Chromebook,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So it comes with like evolution, right?
Yeah.
So we have to, as a society, we have to evolve because AI is not going away. It's only going to get bigger and stronger and all of that type of stuff. But what did we do, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Or 35 years ago, like when all of this stuff started coming in, we started implementing different things in the schools to kind of to actually augment all of that stuff. Is there issues with people using AI to go and write reports and things like that? Yes, I have a kid, and I went through that exact conversation with them. I'm like, don't use AI to do that. And they're like, and they actually brought to me a very, very interesting question, knowing that I work in this field. They're like, well, isn't that the way of the future?
Yeah, I know.
And I'm
it's
like,
a valid question.
that is a very valid question, right? So how do we prevent that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you do. I think you just figure out a way, just like we did in the 90s, to incorporate that into the thing. Like, instead of don't use AI, incorporate it. Okay, how are we going to use AI to solve this problem? It's like a different. It's a different learning. It's a different learning type. It's a paradigm shift from don't do something to it's staying. It's not going anywhere. So how do we use that in our advantage? And I feel like we have to go back to the teachers that were around back when computers first came around. Ask them, how did you deal with it?
Yeah.
All right, we have that resource available to us. And I think from a problem perspective, when it comes to specifically education, I think you're not going to stop kids from using it. I don't think there's any way that you're going to do it. And you're going to, from a policy perspective, if we look at it, I look at it from global, right? So if we look at it just outside of California, we look at the U.S. and we look at global other things that are out there. The other places, they're not going to not let their children use it. They're going to teach them how to use it right. And I know that because I was in the UAE back in February and was talking with some of their legislature while we were there, and that was one of the things. They're like, we want AI K through 12. All right, we want it in every part of the school. President Trump said the same thing, just a few months back. Like everyone is saying the same thing. So rather than stopping it, how do we? I think that's the better answer. The better thought process is how do we coexist with it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think you also have to think about it from a global perspective, right? The countries where the students are learning how to use it as a tool, right, and use it successfully, are probably going to do better in the long run, right? Because it is you can't ignore it, right, and you can't try to avoid it, I guess. But at the same time, too, there's ways to adapt to it, right? If you still want your kids to have to use those critical thinking skills that are really important, maybe you flip some of your learning where some of these like tests or writing projects are done in the classroom, right? And they're not done at home where you can use AI, right? I think there are ways where we can still challenge our students' critical thinking skills, but not completely discouraging it as a tool, right? And I think that's a really good point. I think your point about incrementalism, too, is interesting from earlier where you were talking about the jumps that we're going to see. And I think right now we're just seeing so many huge jumps that are sort of blowing our minds. And it's really hard to, it's sort of hard to think about, does this stop? But when you think about, in 2007 when the iPhone came out, everyone was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I mean, you jumped from like a flip phone or a BlackBerry to like a screen in your hand that you could, just click around on. But now when you go from the iPhone 16 to the iPhone 17, you're not quite as blown away, and I think in technology, that incremental change does slow down eventually, right? What are some of the common misconceptions that you hear about AI? That I don't know if there's anything out there that you hear from a lot, whether it's from companies or individuals, that you think are worth debunking?
I think the biggest one is that AI is new.
That's a good one.
I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that's out there. Alan Turing, right, from the 1940s, World War II. They made a movie about him, The Imitation Game.
Oh yeah.
It's a fascinating movie. So if you want to obviously it's Hollywood and a lot of other stuff. If you want to understand the predictive modeling that kind of comes around AI and those types of things, he also developed the Turing test, which is when are you, how do you know when you're talking to a machine? Is basically the Turing test.
Yeah.
And so if somebody in the 1940s made that test, AI has been around for a very, very, not a very long time, not by comparison, but a lot longer than 2022 when ChatGPT released, and everyone was finally introduced to this world of what they believe is a true AI intelligence that's out there. I think the next kind of big misconception I feel that people believe is that AI is the answer to all of their problems that's out there.
Yeah.
AI is a tool. We'll talk about agentic AI real quick, specifically. So there's a lot of businesses and folks out there that are really interested in agentic AI, but I believe that, and nothing against the tech companies because I'm also one, all right, they're pushing a narrative that's out there about where we're sitting in the world of AI that's out there. And what people aren't realizing is in order to really make AI work, you still need a system.
Yeah.
You need a system behind it that makes it work, whether it's your data, whether it's an LLM, whether it's any one of the other AI tools that are out there. You need to bring it all together to make this work. You can't just go in. I mean, think about any other thing that you've ever built in history. If you're building a car, you can't make the car go without the engine, and you can't make the car go without the wheels, drivetrain, like all of these other things that kind of go into it. But I feel like so many businesses are like, oh, ChatGPT, oh, I'm just going to put on AI and it's going to work. And then 95% of the AI initiatives are failing that are out there. And there's an article that came out by MIT in August of this year that talks about that. And it's actually more friction related than anything else like that. I think of iron sharpens iron that's out there. You need these systems to create some of this friction with AI, because AI it's designed to be pleasing, at least for the moment. That's out there. It's one of the things that I'm concerned about when it comes to people in general that fall in love with these bots, because there's no friction. We're supposed to have friction. We're supposed to have these things.
Too much agreement, you mean? It's just like they're always trying to please you. They're always
it's excellent. I'm like, that was terrible. If I want to prompt, any one of these things, some of my prompts are like, I don't want your typical answer. I want you to be.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I want you to be honest. Like if I'm building like a new section, or if I'm building a product for a client or something like that, I'm like, I need you to be honest, like 100%, no fluff, no nothing. And I will preempt that to basically throw off the original programming of ChatGPT to be able to get it to move forward in a way that actually isn't, that creates that friction that's out there, because otherwise it's just agreeing with you.
Yeah. So why is it designed to be so agreeable, right? I would imagine it's from a consumer standpoint, they want you to like AI. So, we tend to like people that, say, oh yeah, your ideas are the best. And, you're totally right about that, right? So is that sort of the thought process, or is that sort of coming from just like the natural state of how they designed it?
So it's an interesting question, right? And I'm not even 100% sure I know the answer, but I can tell you like some of the data that the AI is trained off of. It's trained off the internet, right?
Yeah.
A lot of data from the internet. Now, is the internet positive or negative?
Oh, geez, that's a hard question.
Isn't it, right?
I don't even know the answer to that.
So the internet, if you're looking at like social media and stuff like that, social media is actually, it's really negative.
It's very negative.
In a lot of different ways. Yeah. That's why you keep I keep my circle small when it comes to the social media, like in particular, that's out there. And a lot of things are very, everything seems to be polarizing nowadays.
100%.
That are out there. So you're using the internet to train an AI system on humans. That's the scary part.
That is really scary when you say it like that.
Yeah, so that's the scary part. So when it comes, and that's where this is why I really can't answer the question, because if you're using this type of data that's out there, especially think Google, Gemini. We haven't even talked about Gemini. So, Google, Gemini. Yeah. So Google's been the biggest search engine in the world for what, 20 years?
Yep.
All right. And, every single search you've ever done is stored somewhere.
Yep. You'd think they would be the most primed to have an AI system, right?
But I think it comes, I agree. I actually think from ChatGPT's perspective, I think it comes down to how they started. They didn't start out trying to make money. They started out trying to make a difference.
That's fascinating.
That was their pretense on doing it. They wanted to make AI available for everyone, and they achieved their goal. But now they're no longer a nonprofit. Now they're and a lot of companies will do that, like going through going through that whole process. But it's interesting. Going back to the original question, I think they do that to create, like you said, a way for people to enjoy and have a pleasant experience with it, because there's so much negativity out there. If you are going to experience something that's positive, people will gravitate towards that. Me, on the other hand, I don't like negativity, but I do enjoy friction, because that's how
honesty,
you grow.
Right?
Yeah, you don't grow by doing things the easy way that's out there. And then, yeah, I mean, that's just part of it.
So let's jump, we talked a little about responsible use, but I know one thing that I was really interested in a few years back was sort of the Future of Life Institute put out these Silomar AI principles on responsible use. I was curious, like, what your thoughts were on those generally, but also just, how do we ensure ethical use? I know you talked earlier about the importance of that. How do you ensure that we're containing some of these harms and we're actually making sure that these systems remain ethical, remain, I guess, remain with a goal of doing good versus, doing something bad?
So that's being part of the Global Council for Responsible AI, that's like our number one goal, is to answer that question, right? Is how do we do that? It's very difficult to actually do that because, it depends on your view of the world. There's people that view the world differently in different parts of the world depending on your point of view. And I worked in the military for a long time. Like I've been to different parts, and also for the Global Council. So when we were working on this framework, we had folks from, I think we were represented by 20 different countries at the framework thing itself that we were putting together. And when we were working on that framework, we got into a discussion over one word. The word was challenge.
Wow.
Very interesting to see so many different points of view over that single word that's out there. So from an ethical perspective, it's very difficult to actually truly define what the word ethical is. And do we do enough? I don't believe that we do. I don't think any of the LLMs companies that are out there, or any of the generative AI, we're just going to, instead of saying LLM, I want to talk generative AI specifically, because that's probably the biggest category that it fits in. I think of world events that are happening around, like, different things that are in there. One of the examples I use in a lot are the riots that happened down in LA, and we're in California, so it doesn't matter which side you stand on or anything like that. So much of what was going on down there was also generated by AI. And that was like, there's an odd statistics. It's something like 60%. I don't know if it's real or not, but it keeps popping up in different places. 60% of like the content on the internet is either AI generated or AI augmented. So think of all your Instagram filters, like all the different things that are out there. So there was discussion points about the stuff that was going on in LA being augmented by AI to show that things were either worse or better than they actually were. I don't know the answer. I wasn't there. But I do believe that that was the case, that there were, because social media just like erupted for and against whatever was going on down there. Like I said, I wasn't there. However, we don't have a block in place on our generative AI tools that are out there that say you can't generate something that's going on in live news right now. And I think that right there is probably one of the biggest value-added things to actually begin to trust some of these tools that are out there. Can you imagine if Gemini or Google or OpenAI or X AI, any one of these companies said, okay, there is a 48-hour news cycle going on right now. We're going to put a stop on generative AI that recognizes pictures related to what is going on in a different area. How much more accurate would our perception of what is going on worldwide be than it is right now?
That's interesting.
So when I look at, that document that came out, and, this is what everyone is saying that we're kind of going off of from an ethical and value AI, I don't believe we're hitting that mark from that perspective. Because, people are people. Like, you have to understand that that's out there. So why do we not have that? We put in safety measures to say, to walk different aspects of what they should and shouldn't do. You can't go to ChatGPT and ask it how to make certain devices that are out there. You can get around it, but there's, for the most part, you can't just go ask it directly. That's out there. I think the other thing comes down to transparency. That's one of the things that we were talking about with the Global Council is how organizations transparent. You look at OpenAI, there's not a lot of transparency with there, and they're the biggest one that's out there. Same with Google. How are we training these models? Like, where are you getting your data from? How are you sitting there and knowing whether or not it's biased or non-biased data? That's a lot of things that people don't really trust either. Is you've got folks that tend to lean one direction or lean the other direction, and whoever leans in the direction that trains the models are now trying to basically manipulate people that are out there, and we don't know the answer to those questions. That's one of the things for our certifications from the framework that we're looking at is how transparent are you? Are you telling people how you're training your model? We don't want your trade secrets, right? That's not what we're doing. We're just asking you, where are you getting your data from? Tell us. Yeah. Tell us what's going on that's out there. And I think that's awesome. The responsibility of these organizations to go out there, that's out there. And I think that follows, the documents that came out in 2017 about what ethical and responsible is, and it varies. Yeah. But there are universal truths that I feel should not be manipulated. Yeah. Especially when people are hurting. And that was my example in LA, whether it didn't matter. People were hurting during that thing, or the fires that were in LA down there. Or, we've got this hurricane that's going on in Jamaica right now. Just imagine there's going to be stuff that comes out from that isn't real. Like, why are we allowing our AI systems to even generate stuff on this? Now, it may not even be us. It could be another country that's doing this. Sure. Yeah. No, and that's also a good thing to keep in mind too. Yeah. I think we have time for 2 more questions, so I want to close with these. I think we sort of touched on this earlier, but the big one, I think, job loss, right? Mm-hmm. And job displacement is always cited as a major concern of AI systems. I know we hear about that a lot as policymakers. What do you see as the biggest challenges, but also the biggest opportunities for job creation, right? With the development of AI as it pertains to workforce specifically? So we'll start with the positive, I think, first on that one. Back in the 1970s and the 1980s, and I've done a lot of research on this, people were afraid that the computer was going to put people out of jobs. Yeah. 100%. 80 million jobs, I think, were around what were available. And now they say that computers created something like 150, 160% new jobs based off of that. It was an incredible boom that's out there. Now, does that mean that people didn't get replaced by a computer? No, that doesn't mean that. You're going to. And I'm just going to be flat out honest. You are going to get replaced in certain jobs by AI. And I know it's not ideal. It's not anything, but there's, what are we at? 7 billion people on the planet right now. Yeah. We've got a lot of problems to solve. That are out there. There's no shortage of problems, and I'm in the belief that there's no shortage of actual financial resources to be able to solve those problems. Right. They're aggregated in different areas, but there are opportunities that present themselves. Going back to the very beginning of the conversation here, where I was talking about how AI is a great equalizer that's out there. So what does that mean? That means that you need to skill. All right, you need to upskill or transitional skill into these abilities to be able to use AI. And I'm not saying create AI. I think that's a difference. I think the creation of AI is going to be, it's really going to be held, at least in the interim, to these bigger companies. They're going to be held to Google, Microsoft. The ones with Apple, the resources. Yeah, with the resources to be able to do that. But that's a great thing. I think that's great. Let them spend their money and their R&D on creating the tools so other people can use the tools in a way that they never imagined that they could be used for. So you need to transfer your skills to be able to do that. There's going to be layoffs that are out there, and that's that's even kind of from a policy perspective. The biggest question is how do we protect the workers from these layoffs that are out there? Amazon
I
on
just
today's
saw that.
date,
Yeah,
30,000 people
Yep.
are going to get laid off from corporate Amazon. There's a lot of hearsay around it, but
a lot of
Amazon
layoffs in tech right now, actually, across the board. Yeah.
a lot of it is AI related. And then do I believe that we're in a place where AI is really starting to accelerate in that? I don't necessarily think so. I forget the name of the company. Klarna, I think, is the name of the company. They laid off 700 workers to replace them with AI agents to be able to do that. And they tanked. Like that whole process
incredible.
just tanked because they were not ready to be able to do that. So they ended up hiring like a significant portion of that back. That's what you're going to see, I believe, in tech that's out there. And I also believe, and I just did an interview from somebody who got laid off from Oracle that we're going to bring onto our staff.
Oh, nice.
So I also believe that a lot of folks that you're going to see starting to go are the people that aren't cross-skilling.
Right.
They're wanting, we know, like we've been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like there are people out there that aren't willing to change. And those are the people that I've unfortunately think that are going to be hit hardest by this AI boom revolution that's there. But if you get behind it and you get understood with it now, it will create jobs later on down the road. They're not going to be the same that we have right now, but it will create new ones. Think about prompt engineering, right? So prompt engineering didn't exist 3 years ago. Now it's a booming field.
And that is something we always have to remember, right? Is that we have careers today that when we were kids, we didn't even know they were possible or would exist, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's something we always need to remember when we have this conversation. But what I really feel like I'm hearing you saying is that certainly there will be job disruption, right?
Absolutely.
Because disruption is sort of a part of technological advance, right?
Exactly.
But in the long run, there is a lot of job potential. And I think that's something that it's always a hard balance because it's still harmful and painful, right, for a certain group of people. And I think as policymakers, we need to be aware of that. We need to be able to manage for that, whether it's with helping people retrain or providing new opportunities or finding, ways for people to shift their skill set. We need to be aware of that. But I do think it's always a tough one, right? With technologies as big as this is, there is disruption, but there's also a lot of potential in the future. And I love your point about the jobs that the computer has created because it really is true.
Absolutely.
So let's close on this. And I know you want to dive a little bit into California specifically, California's image as a tech leader versus the reality of their legacy system. So please feel free to touch on that here as well. But, when we talk about the appropriate level of regulation when it comes to AI, what does that sort of look like? What should policymakers like the California legislature and the federal government, for that matter, be focused on as we prepare for these impacts? And sort of what do you see as sort of the future of policy, right, in this space? And I know that's a broad question, but just as it comes to California policy specifically, what are some of your thoughts?
My biggest thought is don't stifle innovation, but create safe environments for people to be able to thrive in the world of AI. I work in cyber. Obviously, that's one of the things. So regulation and governance is something that I'm intimately familiar with and understand the need for it and all of that. And AI absolutely needs some form of governance that's out there to be able to really go through that. I think a good example is look at the 30,000 Amazon employees that are out there. How do we make that not happen necessarily? And I'm a business owner, right? So I understand there's that's right. All part of the I know that'll happen and there's different reasons for it and things like that. But how do we protect the workers? How do we protect the children? How do we go through and we create policies around exactly what we were talking about? Do we do we stop AI in the school? Do we not stop AI in the school? And I don't think we do. I think we figure out a way to make it safer for the folks that are in there. I think and it's interesting, right? There's the stay for AI related policies that kind of got put into place, which makes it very interesting that are out there. It puts it at the state level to be able to do different things around AI. So figuring out what the needs are, I think is the biggest piece of putting in regulation, and then not necessarily breaking that innovation cycle that's out there. I see the ads, and I'm familiar with that. Keep California ahead in the innovation race that's out there, and I agree with that. But not at the price that we have been paying with AI. So a good example is, how do you regulate if something is in the news cycle, have these AI companies that are out there not post about what's going on in the news, or not make them not be able to do that. What you're going to do is you might actually begin to see who is actually influencing our younger generation that's on these systems, and that it's not. I think if you put the right policy in place, and it's thought out, it's case study, you get the right people that go in there, I think you'll start to see lines in the sand about who is actually truly influencing what's going on out there. That's just my own opinion, and like I said, that's from a policy perspective and regulation perspective, and then there has to be some sort of governance on a lot of these things. Maybe not all the way as strict as some of the other AI regulations that are beginning to come out and do that, but maybe kind of figure out that balance, work with the tech companies, and I'm sure the legislature does.
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. And then working with the different people that are out there, and really, okay, what are people afraid of? I mean, is it a regulatory policy that we should put in place to be able to prevent that fear, or is it an education thing?
Sure.
That we need to do that's out there. Governance, absolutely. Like I said before, regulation in certain regards, absolutely. Like regulating some of the stuff that we know isn't good that's out there, and then really kind of honing in on the people aspect of what the new technology brings.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're gonna see some wild stuff that's out there that AI is really, really going to be able to help with, and also bring in there. I think of the FAA, right? We have autopilots in airplanes. We've been using autonomous systems forever.
Sure.
Are we ready to take the human out of the cockpit? Some people say yes. Some people say no. Like, where does that line really lie? Like, until you get in an emergency, that's where the quick thinking and all of that other stuff comes into play for the pilots. And most people don't even realize how often emergencies occur. Yeah. So I think awareness is probably the biggest thing that policymakers should really kind of drive in terms of campaigns and things like that. Is how do you raise awareness about AI, both its positive and then it's also negative implications that are out there. If you're going to put a policy in place, that's where I would start. Is how do you raise the awareness? How do you put it in schools? How do you put it in all government institutions and things like that?
No, it's a good point. Maybe Star Wars had it right. They just, instead of going autonomous, they just put a droid in there. And it's like people at least felt comfortable. At least there's someone there that's
they could talk
running the ship
360 degrees with the head.
Exactly.
What's going on?
That's pretty cool. But yeah, no, I think that's a great place to close. And I really do appreciate you coming on. I'm happy to give you the last word. If you have any final thoughts on the conversation, or even resources, right, where people can go and learn more about AI. I don't know if there's any books that you'd recommend or anything like that, but feel free to close on that, and we'll wrap this. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a fascinating conversation and getting into it. I think the biggest resource and the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway is, don't be afraid of it. Seek to understand. Seek to listen. First, listen to different people that are out there, and just don't be afraid of it, because it is coming. It may or may not be coming for your job, but just know about it and then move, pivot, go do something else that's out there. Use it and just wait, because it's going to be a crazy ride, especially for medical. I can't wait to see what AI and medical is going to do for human life and things like that. So hop on YouTube. Like I said, I'm a big fan of YouTube that are out there. There's plenty of content creators that are doing that. You can always contact me. I love talking. I'm going I'm going to New York here in a couple of weeks to go and talk on this stuff. So it's I love getting out there and talking to people and just making people aware. And then once again, just be aware. Yeah. Awareness is everything.
No, I think that's key. And, it's really tough, right? We talked about sort of the computer and the fears that came with the introduction of the computer. We also didn't even mention like the internet, right? I mean, the internet came with all this promise, and that was really, in many ways, connected a lot of people, made our world a better place, but then also came with a lot of problems, right? I mean, this whole concept of social media was cool like 10 years ago, and now I'm always worried about, well, I don't really want my kids on social media all the time with the things they might be exposed to, right? So I think there is always sort of that pro and con, but I think the awareness piece is key. So really appreciate it. And if you guys want to learn more about More Evolved, Dan's company, you can go to moreevolved.com. Now, I will clarify that's with one E, right? Yes. So morevolved.com, More Evolved. Dan, thanks so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. I'm sure listeners are going to learn a lot from it. I know I learned a lot from it, and I look forward to staying in touch on AI stuff.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.